Hi everyone, thank you very much for joining us for the year ahead 2021 and what we hope will be a really interesting and useful session. It does seem like only yesterday we were sharing with you our thoughts on the year ahead 2020 and what we believed would drive the ongoing growth in a transformational year for out of home. I mean, look, 2020 has still very much been that, but perhaps not quite in the way that we planned or anticipated. So if we roll back to where we were earlier this year, previously we shared our view on how the future of marketing as we saw it is public, the role that out of home had to play in this context, the fact that it's the only remaining universal media channel when it's getting harder to reach large numbers of people en masse, that it's communal and builds trust like no other channel can, and the connection that out of home creates between the online and the offline world, delivering influence and action in both physical and online environments. And this is still true today, but we do know that things have been very different recently. COVID has had a profound effect on the way that we shop, commute and live our everyday lives. And as a channel, we have felt these changes more acutely than almost any other. And after years of sustained growth, out of home has been at the epicentre of the impact of COVID-19, and therefore we have seen a sharp decline in out of home spend this year, mainly as a result of the lockdown in Q2. But as we move away and into 2021, the industry forecasts for growth of 30%, I think, are rightly optimistic as people return to real life, most likely from Q2 onwards. And we are all able to do the things that we've missed so much in 2020, whether that's going to the cinema, sporting events, gigs, festivals, and so much more. A medium that has declined by 40 plus points this year should see growth of 30 plus next year. It's a fact that COVID did have a drastic impact on audiences. Yet at the same time, I think out of home has been very upfront and centre through this period, a vital channel for comms and community messaging through what has been a very challenging time. And there are many, many examples, as we've talked about through this year, and in this Concerns You sessions, there are many examples of fantastic creativity and innovation that we have seen in the out of home space. So look, where people go and what they do is our expertise. Kinetic have always been experts at understanding audiences at locations and how brands can best connect with them. What the COVID pandemic has done this year is forced us to accelerate further our capabilities in this space, to become faster and smarter about how we use data to deploy relevant, real-time and reactive out-of-home messaging. And it's not just audiences and data we've had to rethink. It's everything from how we use the full capabilities of digital out of home to how we trade, to even what the role of out of home should and could be as we move towards 2021. So our goal next year is to build out of home back and to build it back better. So today we're going to share with you your thoughts on what will help drive growth again in 2021, how the role of out of home is changing in the marketing mix, how out-of-home activation is evolving and is now smarter and more immediate than ever, how the future of marketing is about the connection between the public and the private screen, what audiences are really doing right now, and how that will change in the future, and how creativity and innovation will have an even bigger role than ever to play in out-of-home planning. So firstly, let's hear from our Chief Planning Officer, Nicole Lonsdale, as to how we should be thinking about the role of out of home in 2021.
Thank you, Ali. Hello, everyone. It's widely accepted that out of home is one of the most effective broadcast channels. It continues to reach over 90% of UK adults. But out of home's role and its range of capabilities is so much broader than this in 2021. And over the past 5 years, the industry's changed beyond recognition. Huge investment into the digitisation of inventory, new tech to automate processes, and new data sets to better understand audience mobility in near real time means that the legacy perceptions of out of home as a long lead time, static and inflexible channel only used for broadcast reach is fundamentally outdated. Out of home is now a smarter and faster channel, whether that's transacting a campaign via a DSP based upon audience and a contextual trigger, such as when the weather hits 24 degrees, or by changing creative messaging by time of day or even location. And out of home has the dual benefit of reaching large numbers of the population in a more agile and dynamic way. And it does this in a public space without being influenced by any editorial or content. And statements made in public get noticed and they convey trust. And COVID has had a huge impact on the world, how people shop, where they work, their financial status, but also their beliefs and their values are likely to have changed. And some of these changes may be permanent. And in the same way that society has adapted, we need to adapt the way that brands engage with people outside of the home. And out of home has more to offer post-COVID than ever before. And it's important to rethink out of home's role beyond the more familiar benefits of driving broadcast reach or driving to store, particularly when people's behaviour and beliefs have changed so much. So what can out of home now offer? Well, out of home can future-proof brands. And in a COVID-affected world where there are higher levels of uncertainty, brand fitness becomes important for survival and growth beyond 2021. People will look for reassurance, they'll look for information, and they'll look for brands that they can trust. And successful advertising creates brand fitness. When people see a big, bold ad campaign, they perceive the business as financially viable and have confidence in their product or service. And this is known as a brand fitness signal. And B&Q recently relaunched their brand with out-of-home and 60-second TV ads to embody their new brand purpose and to convey their message with pride in public. They felt that the combination of both channels would deliver this, which they felt that online and social simply couldn't do. And this is supported by our Fresco Life research. And in this research, we showed 500 people an ad for Kudu, a mobile phone company in Canada. 250 people saw the Kudu ad on Instagram, and another 250 people saw the same ad but on an out-of-home panel. And those who saw the ad on out-of-home perceived Kudu to be more popular and successful. And this is known as cultural imprinting. Brand fitness signals, trust metrics, but importantly, purchase intent were also higher for those who saw the out-of-home versus the ad on social media. And out-of-home can also connect with audiences within their communities. So whether it's calling out town names, referencing and supporting local business, or using social proof to change behaviour based upon what others are doing in the local community. And out-of-home provides community utility too, in the form of street furniture and public transport. And 50% of the budgets invested in out-of-home goes back into funding these services in the community. So why is all of this important? Well, COVID has forced people to reconnect with their local communities. And a recent study found that 2/3 of people felt more appreciative and more connected to their local areas. And out-of-home is the only communal channel that can bring the population together at both a national but also a local level. So whether this is through a new idea, an announcement, or even a collective action. And according to Richard Shotton, you're between 2 and 3 times as likely to try a new brand when you've gone through a life event. And COVID is a huge life event, and in the current climate, as people want to know what others are doing, there's a real opportunity for brands to change behaviour by incorporating social proof techniques into their out-of-home creative. And because out-of-home reaches over 90% of all adults, it is one of the most inclusive channels. But through using Root and ONS data via our Journeys platform, we can also effectively target ethnicity. And this allows us to deliver inclusive campaigns where both media placement but also messaging can be tailored to a particular audience. So, for example, changing the creative by language, by positioning, or even image to engage and appeal to different groups of people. And out-of-home's power in the public space, combined with the prevalence of connected devices, means it has the ability to bridge the offline with the online worlds, connecting the public screen with the private screen. And this can work in a number of different ways. Out-of-home can act as the virtual shopfront for brands. It's not only about driving to store anymore. The purchase journeys become far more complex. And out-of-home is just as effective at driving someone online to make a purchase as it is to driving to store. And many online brands have grasped this, including Very, who always use out-of-home as their virtual shopfront in the run-up to key shopping events. And their Black Friday campaign in 2017 drove revenue by a massive 17% year on year. And out-of-home will become even more important with the continued rise of frictionless commerce, the growth of social commerce, and also visual search, with out-of-home acting as the signpost to purchase. And out-of-home has the ability to connect screens, offering synchronicity of viewing and driving incremental reach of other digital channels. And out-of-home and social are particularly complementary. Both deliver over 90% weekly reach of the 18 to 34-year-old audience. And in the case of digital out-of-home, both use short-form video, often without sound, meaning the same creative assets can be used effectively on both channels. And by using our Journeys platform, we're able to plan smarter to effectively target audiences based upon their online behaviour. So, for example, heavy users of streaming services or those who frequently use social media. And we're then able to select out-of-home locations based upon their mobility outside of the home. And out-of-home also works well with other channels. And in this meta-analysis, over 50 campaigns from Mediacom and Wavemaker were measured, and it showed that out-of-home had a greater effect on other place-based but also digital media. So not only can out-of-home drive action on its own, but it also makes other media perform better too. I'm now going to hand over to Jenny Roper, our Head of Insight and Research, who's going to take you through audiences outdoors, specifically looking at current behaviours, but also our predictions for the future.
Thanks, Nicole. So let's talk about the out-of-home audience. There are lots of knowns and some unknowns. Things have changed. And in this section, we're going to look at the changing out-of-home audience, how we are measuring this, and what this means for 2021 planning. So, do you remember this? Busy commutes, packed high streets, and you could go out and get drunk with whoever you wanted, whenever you wanted. It feels like a long time ago, but this was less than a year ago. Things have changed this year. To prevent the spread of COVID-19, people have been told to work from home where they can. Many high street shops have been temporarily closed, and people aren't allowed to socialise in big groups. They can only go to certain socialising hotspots at certain times. Despite this, we still reach over 90% of the UK population every week. You try not going out for a week, but there are some things to remember. Around 75% of the UK working population cannot work from home, although we have seen shifts in people preferring private over public transport. Throughout the pandemic, 90% of grocery shopping has been done in store. Now, there has been a shift towards the weekly shop, and we have seen shifts in more people doing online shopping for both fashion and gaming, as high street shops have been closed. However, when the shops reopen, as they did in Wales this month, shops like Primark saw queues around the block. So whether for food, fashion or fun, people are going out every week to buy things from bricks and mortar stores. Government restrictions have meant people can no longer go out all Saturday night. Schemes like Eat Out to Help Out have encouraged more people to dine out midweek. We're seeing less spikes in footfall at the weekend. We are seeing spikes the week before and the weeks after lockdown restrictions are lifted. The out-of-home audience has adapted to COVID-19 restrictions. Our smart planning tools have adapted quickly. We're using our Journeys platform more and more. This is updated daily with SDK data and has access to nearly 6 million devices. Journeys fuses SDK data with static data sets like route, and this allows us to measure changing mobility patterns. And here's what we get from the Journeys platform. The darker the pink, the more impacts are being delivered to those out-of-home sites. In the first week of lockdown, everything is grey and under-indexing. As lockdown eases, there are clear pockets that show back to normal impact delivery. By August, nearly everything is pink in Brighton. And whilst it is interesting to see people's travel habits, the real value comes from comparing key audience segments before and after lockdown restrictions. So remember those 25% of people who don't have to commute to work every day? With Journeys, we can segment the data to understand where those people go on the days they don't commute into work. The benefit is that we can understand and plan audiences based upon fact and not an individual's perception. Our Journeys platform tells us that when the government asked us to work from home if you can, it didn't have a negative impact on out-of-home audience impacts. In the first week of October, roadside impacts increased by 8%. Remember, this is impacts. Reach is there. So the same number of people going out each week, it's the frequency or how often people are out on the roads that is affected. Journeys also tells us that local restrictions have minimal impact on how much people go out and about. And when the government introduced a 10 PM curfew, this didn't stop people from going out. People just went out earlier. The reach is there. It's just the time period that changed. Our Journeys data does show that people are more likely to frequent their local area. This doesn't mean that there is no audience in conurbations or city centres. Yes, non-conurbations are least affected by COVID-19. Yet, conurbations deliver the bulk of out-of-home audience impacts. Remember, people do live in cities. 9 million people live in London, and they're visiting their local areas. Big data sets like Journeys are incredibly powerful and valuable. The limitation is that big data can only look back. If you want to know what people are likely to do, then social proof is a valuable tool. We like to do what we think other people are doing. Bickman and Berowitz demonstrated this by getting people to look up. So if a group of people see just one person looking up, then a few people will look up. Their experiments showed the more people that looked up in the first instance, the more people looked up in general. Knowing what other people are doing drives action, and this is known as social proof. And we're using this technique to understand what people will do in the future. It's very effective. Using social proof techniques has correctly predicted every winner of the UK elections since the 1950s. If only the pollsters had used this technique for the recent US elections. At Kinetic, we're using big data sets like Journeys, paired with thick data sets like our Alfresco Life panel, to understand how out-of-home mobility patterns have adapted. When the government decreed the March lockdown, there were some big changes. Many people couldn't go to work. More people turned to convenience shopping, and shops, pubs and restaurants were closed. In the months that followed, there were some behaviours that are still in play. Our data shows people still favouring the car over the train. The weekly grocery shop is still a staple, and 18 to 34-year-olds are at the forefront of socialising. Our insight indicates that these behaviours are residual and will not last once the threat of the pandemic has gone. But one thing is for sure, when the restrictions are lifted, there'll be a huge appetite for people wanting to attend outdoor festivals like Glastonbury. Now, there are some behaviours we believe will stick. The 3-day-week commute, a blend of online and offline shopping, and that any day can be a socialising day, not just the weekend. and what is sticking forms our emerging trends for 2021. We're likely to see a 3-day commute for the 25% of the UK population who have the opportunity to work from home. Reach will be the same for this audience. It will be frequency that goes down. With the smart use of data, we can identify the 3-day-a-week commuting audience's mobility patterns and adapt our out-of-home marketing plans accordingly. There is an increase in people using online shopping, and the biggest shifts have been seen for the 55+ age group. We can identify online shoppers in key categories and then quickly target these people when they are out and about. And finally, people will be socialising more in their communities and will be more likely to go out midweek. COVID-19 has accelerated the use of QR codes. Consumers have now caught up with the ad industry. And these emerging trends are guiding our smarter planning, which Nicole will talk about next.
Thank you, Jenny. So smarter planning for 2021 is about being agile. We must adapt the way that we think about out of home as planners, but also advertisers. Out of home planning needs to be, but it also can be adaptive based upon the changing regulations and changing behaviour. And fundamentally, it's about putting audience at the heart of our planning. And we're experts in understanding audiences at location and transforming their journeys into active journeys, as this is an audience who are highly connected. And out of home's power to target the right audience in the right location, combined with people's reliance on their devices when out of home, acts as a powerful trigger for online behaviours. And the acceleration of our near real-time audience tracking capabilities and the insight that this offers has enhanced our adaptive planning capabilities, particularly behaviours that have changed or they've been born out of the COVID pandemic. And to bring this to life, we've used our Journeys platform to identify historical London Underground users. And we can establish any stations that still deliver significant audience impacts, even if they're not quite back to pre-COVID levels. But importantly, we can also identify where they can be found now and change the distribution and weight of campaigns to match. And as this behaviour changes and more people return to the tube, we can then adapt our planning even further. And we've already spoken about the rise of e-commerce and how for some categories, although not all, this has accelerated during the pandemic. And we also know that out of home drives commerce, regardless of where that purchase takes place. And Journeys allows us to identify a range of different audience shopper segments by category, by product, or even brand, but also importantly, the shopper's preference for how they make that purchase. So for example, we can isolate the Christmas holiday shoppers who make their purchases online, and also those who are more inclined to shop in bricks and mortar stores. And bricks and mortar shoppers, as you can see here, can be identified using SDK footfall data, identifying those who've been seen in a particular store or even a competitor's store, which is then used in conjunction with purchase behaviour. And online shoppers can be identified based upon transaction data, as well as mobile data on brand affinities and interests. And all of this is collected from website visitation, but also app usage too. And while online shoppers are by definition purchasing online, there's still a clear pattern between online purchasing and bricks and mortar visitation. And by identifying shopping mall visits amongst this audience, we're able to see that there are still clear hotspots of online shopper footfall in mall environments. And this map highlights Bluewater, Brent Cross, and also the 2 Westfields as having a particularly large percentage of online beauty shoppers. And by using Journeys, we can then identify these online shoppers throughout their day, enabling us to deliver tailored messaging at multiple touch points. And we can use online behaviours to shape and inform our planning across a range of different categories and brands. And I mentioned earlier on about extending the reach of social campaigns using out of home. So identifying those who regularly use different social platforms and then selecting out of home opportunities, so both environments but also frames that index highly against them. But other examples are people who purchase fast food online or via an app, or those that have visited a particular motor brand's website or even their competitors. We then use this online behaviour to identify and connect with them using out of home offline. And Journey's ability to identify near real-time mobility patterns across a range of different audience segments allows us to be uniquely placed to optimise campaign delivery, to react to any changes in audience mobility that results from the pandemic. So whether that's in the short term or even longer term. And the advancements in tech and data has evolved our routes to market to exploit the existing strengths, but also the new capabilities that out of home now offers, allowing us to plan more precisely by geography, by location, by day of week, but also time of day. And we can do this right the way down to a frame level if that's required. And this includes broadcast-based solutions, which, as I've mentioned, are brilliant at driving reach, building brands and keeping them front of mind, which is incredibly important in times of economic uncertainty. But also targeted broadcast solutions that can incorporate behavioural audience targeting to bring more intelligence to planning and allow out of home to be better integrated with other digital channels. And also programmatic out of home, which in our case is near real-time contextual audience planning and buying. And at Kinetic, we feel the future of out of home activation will very much be a blended approach, offering both the smarter targeting, but also the immediacy that brands may require. And I'm now going to hand back to Jenny, who's going to talk about how we infuse behavioural science thinking into our planning too.
Thanks, Nicole. So we've seen how we can make our plans more efficient. To help our clients' brands grow, we use behavioural science thinking to make them more effective. There are some key facts that enable us to do this. Fact, we are social creatures. When we know what other people are doing, like looking up, we're more likely to do it. This is social proof. The "I'll have what she's having" phenomenon. Out of home is a great medium for demonstrating what others are doing. Fact, size really does matter in advertising effectiveness. This is costly signalling theory. The bigger the ad, the bigger the brand fitness. Out of home is great for brand fitness. And the final fact, advertising wears in and wears out again. Just like a song that we love, we want to hear it more and more and more and more and more, but eventually we tire of it. This is the mere exposure effect. We need to plan beyond out-of-home impacts with frequency levels in mind. We've done lots of experiments to aid our out-of-home effectiveness understanding. We put the findings in the context of an out-of-home behavioural science framework. So the message is linked to social proof. The medium is linked to costly signalling theory, and the frequency with which we see something is linked to the mere exposure effect. Having a framework means that we can quickly adapt. We are in stressful times. We know that community is more important in times of stress, and this should be flexed on the creative. People want more reassurance in times of uncertainty. To counter this and build trust, special builds and large format should be used more. When stressed, people need to see things more often for the message to sink in. This means that digital out of home should be utilised more to push up optimum frequency levels. Great out of home advertising is about a great message on a great canvas that flexes great technology. And this is what Dominic Murray, our Head of Innovation, will address next.
Thank you, Jenny. Creativity is what sets us apart, how we stand out, how we earn attention, how we create difference and add value for our clients. Often creativity can come from the ability to see beyond established patterns and processes that lead to familiar outcomes. It is in the exploration of alternative arrangements of information that new ideas can be found. Ideas can be remixes built upon and from existing seemingly disparate or unconnected elements. The more polarized the elements, the more interesting the combination. What we do when we try to have ideas is to test multiple new relationships quickly. Look from multiple angles and match each element with another until they fall into place and the idea reveals itself. The more elements in the mix, the greater the creative potential, and those in need of creative inspiration should look to out of home. Out of home is a kaleidoscope consisting of thousands of elements that can be combined and connected in an infinite number of ways. Out of home is the most creative medium with the greatest potential. Out of home is a mix of the old and the new, with elements of art, science, and technology all in rotation. Out of home allows us to see different forms in everyday objects, to play with shape, size, context, and expectation. And these techniques have been consistently applied in out of home to deliver beautifully simple visual metaphors, creating content which can be easily shared and understood across any visual platform. Like this example from the BBC for Dracula, which generated 7 million views across social media and 60% of the chatter of the John Lewis Christmas advert for just a fraction of the budget. An array of special production techniques can deliver different finishes, textures, and effects that can turn something familiar into something extraordinary and engaging. Distinctiveness is highly memorable, and creativity makes brands more memorable. Studies show when consumers are presented with similar stimuli, it is the one that differs that is most likely to be remembered. Creativity is an advantage. Out of home encourages us to view the real world as our canvas, offering unrivaled scale and production options to maximize brand assets. Ads featuring distinctive brand assets boost ad recognition by 34%. Out of home can create aesthetic experiences at scale that can arouse an emotional response. We can project or paint upon the city, add to, and create culture. We can combine artistic effects with 3D sculpture to add to the vibrancy of the city. Or as Nike did, combine street art and location-based mobile experiences to launch new sneakers in Sao Paulo. Teaming up with local artists to paint shoes on the feet of their graffiti characters, fans could access the drop by visiting the walls and unlocking purchase at Nike.com. Now, this campaign resulted in a 32% increase in sales for Nike, an increase of 22% in traffic, and 80 million social media impressions. Out of home can ignite the senses, imbuing emotion and enriching memory. All 5 senses are at play in out of home, and they can be combined to create powerful and immersive experiences. Coca-Cola used scent to evoke the holiday season, installing cinnamon-infused posters on the London Underground. And touch is still viable through improving haptic technology that can mimic physical sensations for the user and enable interaction and navigation of digital out of home. Out of home has the ability to adapt because it draws from so many varied disciplines. The best digital out of home campaigns find new patterns in the exploration and arrangement of live data, location, and context. Data can provide an understanding of context that can help shape your placement or creative message, and unlock micro and macro moments in which a creative response will flourish. The best campaigns are built on clever applications of relevant first and third party data to create or trigger content in real time. Like Lynx, who use social data to compare the amount of attention certain frivolous topics were getting online over something as powerful as suicide prevention. Or Spotify, who used user data to celebrate their customers and their platform in yet another fantastic out-of-home campaign. BA used search data to ensure that if people in Fulham were searching for Rio or New York, then BA's latest deal was on display in that area. And B&Q combined 10 years of historic sales data and 10 years of historic weather data to predict what DIY tasks people would do on the weekend and serve up the most relevant product and deal. Properly applying DCO tools, brands can be smarter and adaptable in 2021. Dynamic digital out of home enables brands to be reactive, relevant, and agile when required. Contextually relevant messaging increases effectiveness by 17%. Creative response is boosted by 6%. And campaigns using these kind of tools can see a sales uplift of up to 7% on average. So we know out of home drives action, but creativity can earn attention and be the catalyst that tips the passive to the active. In cities hosting Champions League games, Budweiser used billboards and ambient media like beer mats, posters, and t-shirts to encourage people to search obscure Google football phrases. The search terms drove the Google images of footballers celebrating with Bud and not the official beer of the tournament. Including the US activation, the campaign resulted in 7.5 million searches for the iconic images without any SEO investment. Chevrolet used a variety of media placements to nudge customers towards purchase. Based on data that car purchases made by your neighbours are likely to increase your likelihood to purchase a car by approximately 80%, the brand mapped out an area in Mexico City where the Chevrolet Aveo was the most sold model. They then bombarded that area with visual nudges to prod to purchase. The campaign resulted in a sales increase of 145% in that area for just a quarter of the normal budget. And as we saw with Nike, layering mobile experiences over out-of-home increasingly makes sense, especially when the value exchange is right. Like this from Burger King. Burger King app users burned 400,000 ads to claim free Whoppers. The campaign boosted downloads and increased sales and generated 1 billion media impressions across the world. Campaigns like this, mixed realities, can add an accessible digital layer of information, entertainment, commerce, and navigation on top of the real world and out of home. Premium world lenses augment environments, installations, products, or posters. And we can allow people to step into another world through an AR portal. In 2021, 5G will become an enabler and an accelerator of this behaviour. It will not drastically change things, but will make these types of activations more accessible and rewarding. 5G customers already use 3 times more data than their 4G counterparts. And one pertinent product which we are proud to be exclusive partners of is Pluvo. Pluvo is a solution to urban air pollution. Mimicking the air purifying qualities of rain, Pluvo uses an enclosed mist of water droplets to remove dangerous pollutants from the air. Pluvo can remove up to 99% of particulate matter and 60% of dangerous gases such as nitrogen dioxide. Pluvo will reduce air pollution around the unit by 50% in an hour, and recent trials show Pluvo successful at removing viruses. The first installation of Pluvo units is planned for next year, and we look forward to bringing you that opportunity. In 2021, we must encourage our clients to invest in, support, and plan creativity in the long term. A commitment to creativity will drive effectiveness, as analysis covering thousands of case studies from Cannes, WARC, and the IPA shows. A higher creative equipment score, which is the backing a client can give a creative idea based on spend, duration, channels, the higher the campaign effectiveness. So encouraging a commitment to creativity will make a difference to media performance. Creative is the leading contributor to sales, and when creative is strong, sales lift is higher. So it is in all our interest to champion and protect creativity. After all, creativity may well be the last legal unfair competitive advantage we can take to run over the competition. Committing to creativity will drive long-term business effects, and out-of-home creativity does not require big budgets, but simply the ability to see and make connections that others haven't. Out-of-home is a kaleidoscope of creative elements that will tumble into place to provide creative inspiration and solutions for you and your clients. I'm now going to hand back to Ali. Thanks.
Thanks, Tom. That's brilliant. Love that. Look, as I highlighted up front, we have had a very difficult year as an industry. Yet we know that all the changes and the developments that were happening going into 2020 will be what helps us build back better. And that 2021 will see significant regrowth in the out-of-home channel. And as we return to real life, whatever that looks like, reaching valuable audiences on the move will be critical to the success of our clients. And the industry will continue to become smarter, more adaptable and automated, fueled by, as you've just seen, ever more creativity and innovation. And, we're going to make it easier than ever to plan and buy, with ever greater proof points of out-of-home's efficacy and the ability to influence how people behave in the physical and the digital world. So look, I hope that was useful, interesting, informative. Would love any feedback you can give us, but thank you very much for taking the time to listen and to join us today. Thank you.